I wasn't looking for readers. I was looking for myself. I know the title sounds strange. A retired Latin teacher writing books for lonely men? That's not exactly what I had planned for my 60s, but sometimes, after a long silence, a voice comes out of you that surprises even yourself. This isn't a story about writing or even about success. It's about loneliness, about what happens when everything you've built disappears and the strange, slow way you start to rebuild one page at a time. For 35 years, I taught Latin at a private all-girls school. There were uniforms, quiet hallways, ancient texts, and a kind of order that suited me. I liked structure. I liked quiet. I liked being useful. There was a rhythm to it. First period, third declension, midterms, Virgil. Every year brought new faces, but I remained. The same desk, the same chalk, the same calm certainty. I felt anchored in that room, surrounded by the past, translating old truths into modern minds. I didn't need more than that. In a world that moved too fast, I taught a language no one used anymore, and somehow that felt like a kind of protection. I never had children. Not because I couldn't, but because I thought I didn't need to. My work was enough. The girls called me Miss Carter, and in some way I liked that more than Mom. I never married either. There were a few men, polite dinners, mutual interests that never deepened, but nothing ever pulled me from the life I had built. I told myself I was content. I told myself I had chosen this, and maybe I had. But choices made at 30 feel different at 60, especially when there's no one to tell your stories to at the end of the day. When I turned 62, I retired. The school gave me flowers and a plaque. Then the silence began. At first it felt like rest. Then it felt like being erased. I no longer had papers to grade or girls calling my name. No bells, no schedule, no reason to wear real clothes. It's strange how invisible you can feel once you step outside a role you've filled for so long. The world didn't seem to notice I was gone. I thought I'd be happy to rest, but instead I felt like a book someone had closed halfway through. I used to wake up with purpose, lessons to prepare, students to shape. Now I woke to the sound of the kettle and the weight of my own breath. Time became something I had to fill. I'd walk to the market just to hear other people's voices. I'd sit with my coffee far too long, just watching it go cold. I started reading again, not for study, but for survival. But even the books felt distant. None of them sounded like me. None of them spoke to what it felt like to be a woman alone after everything. It wasn't sobbing into a pillow. It was eating dinner in silence, seeing no one for 3 days, realizing I hadn't spoken out loud since Monday. It was the absence of interruption, the sound of nothing happening, no one needing me, no one noticing. I wouldn't have called it depression, not then. It felt too ordinary for that. But there was a heaviness, a kind of low-grade ache that settled behind everything. I kept thinking, this can't be it. But I had no idea what it even meant anymore. I wasn't waiting for anything. And still, I felt like something was missing. Not something big, just human. I wasn't in crisis. I wasn't in love. I wasn't in anything. That was the problem. My life was flat. Even sadness felt like it belonged to someone else. I was healthy. I had a pension, a roof over my head. So what was I allowed to feel? Gratitude? I tried. But underneath it was this strange numbness, like I was walking through my own life in someone else's shoes. I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel like anyone. It was as if I had drifted off course, slowly and quietly, until the shore was gone and I didn't remember how to swim back. Knitting, bridge, watercolor classes. None of it mattered. I didn't want to be distracted. I wanted to feel something. The women in those groups talked about grandchildren, cruises, knee replacements. I nodded, smiled, went home early. I thought maybe I should volunteer, join a book club, start a garden. I tried all three briefly, but they felt like someone else's life. Polite, pleasant, and far too quiet. I wasn't looking for activities. I was looking for meaning, or at least a reason to get out of bed that wasn't just to pass the time. One afternoon, I found a notebook I'd kept when I was 28. I was shocked by how much I wanted then, how alive my words were. I didn't recognize that woman. I missed her. She was curious, hungry, full of half-shaped dreams. There were entries about poems I never wrote, trips I never took, a man I almost loved. And I cried, not out of regret exactly, but out of the strange grief of meeting a version of yourself you let slip away. I thought I had grown up. I thought I had chosen wisely. But reading that journal made me wonder, had I also chosen safety over living? Not with a plan, not even with confidence. I just opened a blank document and wrote about a man I made up, divorced, quiet, afraid of his own kitchen. I didn't know where it came from, but he felt real. He missed his wife, not for her cooking or her company, but for how she made him feel like someone worth speaking to. He was gentle, wounded, a little lost. I gave him small routines, folding his laundry, drinking coffee in the same chipped mug, and as I wrote him, something in me stirred. It wasn't about him. It was about what I needed to say, even if no one else would ever read it. I gave him a name. Then I gave him a past. He liked jazz. He missed his dog. He went to the same diner every Tuesday. I didn't know where it was going, but I didn't care. He existed. I let him sit quietly in his apartment and think about things no one asked him anymore. I gave him memories, small regrets, private jokes. He didn't have a mission. He wasn't here to be redeemed or rescued. He was just trying to get through a Tuesday without falling apart. And somehow, writing that, letting him exist, made me feel less invisible too. It was like I was building a world where people like him mattered, and maybe people like me did too. Coffee, silence, a laptop, him, then another character, then another. I didn't tell anyone. It was too private, too strange. It felt like a secret I was keeping from the rest of the world, this quiet thing that belonged only to me. I wasn't trying to be a writer. I wasn't aiming for anything. I just knew that when I wrote, I felt less hollow. I started waking up with a kind of purpose again, not the rigid structure of the classroom, but something softer, quieter, a rhythm that didn't require me to perform. I wasn't a teacher anymore. I wasn't anyone's anything, but for an hour or two each morning, I was someone again. The writing didn't cure me, but it gave shape to the fog. I started looking forward to mornings. It was the first thing I'd felt connected to in months. Not joy exactly, but motion. A sense of something opening, very slowly. I was still alone, still unsure, still waking up to an empty house. But I had words now. I had characters waiting for me. I found myself thinking about them when I wasn't at the keyboard, wondering what they'd do next, how they'd speak to each other, what they were afraid of. They were fictional, but they were giving me back something real, a reason to listen, even if it was just to myself. The sketches grew. Soon I had a novella, then two. I wrote about widowers, grandfathers, men who'd failed their marriages. They weren't glamorous, but they were trying. They were learning how to sit with their shame, how to say, I don't know, without crumbling. I didn't write them to fix anything. I just wanted to understand them. Maybe I was trying to understand someone I never married, or someone I might have. Maybe I was writing the conversations I never got to have. Whatever the reason, the stories kept coming. I wasn't editing myself. I wasn't writing for an audience. I was just letting something speak. She said it made her cry, not because it was sad, but because she saw her father in it. She asked if she could send it to someone. I said yes, nervously. I didn't expect anything to come of it. I figured he'd read it and forget it. But the next week she forwarded me his reply. He said it was the first time he'd felt understood in a very long time. That one story made him feel less alone. I stared at the message for a long time. I hadn't written it for men like him, not on purpose, but somehow they were finding themselves in it. And maybe I was too. A man, 66, said he hadn't read fiction in 20 years, but my story made him feel seen. That word shook me. Seen. I didn't know he was looking for something. I didn't know I was either. He told me the story reminded him of a conversation he never got to have with his brother before he died. He thanked me, not in a grand, flowery way, just simply, sincerely. I read his message 3 times before replying. I realized in that moment I wasn't just passing time. I wasn't just writing to myself. These characters, these lonely men I'd conjured in the quiet, they were holding up a mirror, and people were seeing themselves in it. Anonymously at first, just PDFs on a simple blog, no photos, no comments, just the words. People found them anyway, not in waves, not viral, just one reader at a time. A link passed quietly, an email forwarded, a bookmark saved. I didn't promote anything. I didn't even name the site after myself. I didn't want applause. I just wanted the stories to breathe. There was something freeing in that. Writing without expectation, without noise, just truth in a plain font on a white screen. It felt like whispering into the dark and finding that someone was whispering back. Men told me things their children didn't know. Women sent me their husbands' stories. It wasn't just writing anymore. It was listening. They told me about breakups that never healed, friendships they let drift, guilt they didn't know what to do with. And I listened. I didn't try to fix it. I just held it, the way I held my characters, gently, with space. I started to understand that what I was doing to Joa wasn't sentimental. It was witnessing, giving shape to feelings people didn't have words for. The loneliness wasn't just mine. It had its own community. Quiet, scattered, but real. A local book club reached out. They wanted to meet me. I almost declined. What would I say? That I never meant for this to happen? That I wasn't a real writer, just a retired teacher filling her time? I stared at the invitation for days. It wasn't fear of people. I'd taught hundreds of students. It was fear of stepping out from behind the screen. These stories were safe in solitude. If I stood in front of strangers, would they see through me? Would they ask why I wrote about men or what I knew about grief? I didn't have answers, but I went anyway. And they were kind, curious, grateful. No one asked why I wrote about men. They seemed to understand. I wasn't writing about gender. I was writing about aloneness, about memory, about small daily courage. The room was filled with people who had lived long enough to know what silence costs and what it gives back if you let it. We talked, not just about the stories, but about life after the noise fades, after the roles shift, after the applause, if there ever was any. I left feeling strange and quiet and full, like I'd just visited a place I hadn't known I needed. The characters I wrote, they weren't just made up. They were parts of me, my fears, my regrets, my hopes, even if I wouldn't admit them. The man who missed his dog, that was me, missing structure. The widower who couldn't bring himself to clear out the closet, that was me, still holding on to an old version of myself. Every hesitation, every silent kitchen, every unfinished conversation, I'd lived all of them in some way. I wasn't writing fiction so much as I was giving shape to the things I couldn't say out loud. They came out as stories, but they were really pieces of a woman trying to find her footing again. Phrases about longing, endings, beginnings, they made their way into the dialogue. The past wasn't gone. It was repurposed. Amor Manet, Love Remains, Tempus Fugit, Memoria Manet, Time Flies, Memory Stays. I'd spent years teaching these expressions as if they were artifacts. But now they returned like old friends, not to impress anyone, but to comfort me. I realized I hadn't truly left my old life behind. It was just taking a different form. The language I once taught had followed me here, whispering gently through these men's stories, anchoring me in something deeper than vocabulary. Not because I was published, not because I was successful, but because writing had become my way of being. It wasn't just a thing I did. It was how I processed the world now, how I stitched myself back together. I stopped apologizing when people asked what I was doing with my time. I stopped minimizing it, calling it just a little blog or just something to keep busy. I said, I write. And it felt honest. Not proud, not performative, just clear. I didn't need anyone else to validate it. It had already saved me in ways I didn't even know I needed. The loneliness didn't vanish, but it softened. I had something now, a place where I could meet myself. The days didn't feel so hollow. I still had long afternoons when the silence pressed in, but now I knew where to go with it. I could open my laptop, return to a character, and let the feelings speak through them. It didn't fix anything, but it gave me rhythm and dignity, and a quiet kind of hope that wasn't loud or showy, but steady. Some days I wrote a single paragraph, some days nothing at all, but I kept coming back, and that mattered more than I expected. A collection, a physical book, I wasn't sure, but part of me wanted to hold it in my hands, to prove I had existed in a different way, not just as a teacher, not just as someone who used to be busy, but as someone who'd made something real. I didn't know how to begin, the logistics, the printing, the cost, but I said yes, slowly, cautiously. And in saying yes, I felt another kind of door open. I realized I didn't have to disappear after retirement. I could still offer something, even if it was just a quiet story passed from one lonely person to another. Nothing fancy, a simple cover, a print run of 200. I called it Men I Almost Knew. It felt strange holding it in my hands, something I'd made not for grades or reviews, but out of sheer necessity. I didn't expect much. I figured I'd give most of them away, or they'd sit in boxes. But within 2 weeks, they were gone. People shared it, quietly, without fanfare. Some sent extra money in the envelope. Some sent letters. It wasn't a launch. It was a ripple. And it was enough. I didn't need bestseller lists. I needed that feeling of having spoken and been heard. He'd found the book in the prison library. Said it was the first thing he'd finished in years. He wrote in slanted pencil that he cried during lunch. Not because it was sad, but because he remembered who he used to be. The man in your story, he wrote. He thought he was broken, but he wasn't. He was just quiet. That line stayed with me because maybe that's the truth of it. We aren't always wounded. Sometimes we're just quieter than the world knows how to notice. And stories, mine, his, become a kind of noticing. Was it real literature? Would it win awards? Would it get reviewed? Those questions used to buzz around me like flies, but they faded because I saw what actually mattered, that someone felt less alone because of it, that I did. When you've spent years teaching the classics, you're conditioned to measure by greatness. But this was something else, something softer, but no less true. I stopped apologizing for the simplicity. I stopped defending the stories. They didn't need defense. They had done what they were meant to do. I used to think my story ended with retirement. That was the quiet understanding. You taught, you retired, you faded. But now I know the last third of life can be the most honest part. There's no need to perform, no career to chase, just space. Space to see what's been waiting under the surface all along. I don't wish for youth again. I don't want to be 30 or even 50. I want this, the stillness, the pages, the late mornings with coffee. I didn't find a second chance. I just stopped ignoring the first one. Don't wait until silence becomes unbearable. Start listening earlier. Your voice is quieter than you think, but it's there. Don't wait for someone to invite it out. Don't wait for the title or the permission. You don't need a crisis to begin. You just need to believe that your inner life matters, that your observations are enough, that writing or painting or walking alone with your thoughts can be a form of living. I would tell her that loneliness isn't failure. It's a place, and you can build something there. Maybe you've never written a word. Maybe you're not a teacher. But if you've ever felt invisible, like your story's already been told, I promise the page is still blank. You don't need a grand idea. You just need a voice, a moment of quiet where something stirs. That's all this ever was. Not a career, not a comeback. Just one honest sentence at a time. We don't need to remake ourselves. We just need to show up, truthfully, patiently, and tell what we know. And maybe if we're lucky, someone else will nod and say, "Me too." I wasn't looking for readers. I was looking for myself. And along the way, I found others who were doing the same, quietly, honestly, imperfectly. Maybe that's all we're ever really doing, trying to find someone who'll sit with us in the silence and stay. If this story meant something to you, if it made you feel seen or reminded you that quiet lives still carry weight, consider subscribing. These are the kinds of stories we tell here. Leave a comment below. Have you ever found yourself starting something unexpected just to fill a silence, or felt surprised by who connected with your words? And if you're curious what happens when a retired librarian discovers stand-up comedy, I think you'll want to watch our last video. It's about finding your voice, even if it takes 70 years.